You want to get lean, but nothing seems to work. You're training hard, you're trying to eat clean, but the belly fat, it just stays. The fat just clings on and you feel stuck, frustrated, tired of starting over and over again. And I've been there. I used to convince myself it was my slow metabolism, yeah? I thought I could just train harder and the abs will come. I tried carb cutting, skipping meals, chasing the newest diet trends, keto, all that stuff. None of it worked, okay, until I stopped guessing and learned what actually mattered. You don't get lean by training harder. You get lean by eating smarter. So this video is the diet I use to lose fat and get lean. And FYI, it's not some super strict, zero carb, chicken and broccoli bro diet that makes you hate your life, okay? It's not that. You know what nobody wants to admit? Most people who try to get lean never do. They fail. They start the journey, they might even go to the gym, do some meal prep, but a few weeks go by and they've already quit, back to square one. So the real question isn't, how do I get lean? It's how do I not become just another failed statistic, okay? Because let's be real, most people will fail. And I've been there, by the way. I wasn't always in shape and I definitely wasn't always lean. And I spent most of my life being the exact opposite. And I used to look at guys like online with visible abs and think, that's just genetics, well, they're definitely doing steroids. I can never achieve that. But the truth is you can. You just need the right approach and the discipline to stick with it. Let's just flip the question for a second. Okay, so what would I do if I wanted to stay overweight? Honestly, I'd smash through fast food, multiple times a week, grab a takeaway on the way home after work, snack from the vending machines when I'm at work as well, drink my calories. I wouldn't eat any fruit. I wouldn't eat any veg, snack mindlessly, whilst I'm scrolling on Instagram at night or watching a movie on Netflix. And of course, I'd never track a single thing I'd eat. Sound familiar? That was me at one point, okay? I'd tell myself I want to get in shape. I was making zero real effort to actually change my habits. And surprise, surprise, nothing changed. So what's the real driver of fat loss? Now, here's where a lot of people get it wrong. They think that fat loss is about running on the treadmill for an hour or doing 1,000 crunches, or maybe buying that new supplement, they saw on social media or online. No, the real driver of fat loss, your diet, specifically your calorie intake. And if you're eating more calories than your body needs, you will gain weight. And if you're eating fewer calories than your body needs, you'll lose it. Like this is the one rule you cannot break, okay? No matter what diet you follow, whether it's keto, whether you do intermittent fasting, low fat, paleo, carnivore, whatever. If you're not in a calorie deficit, you're not losing fat. Now, don't get me wrong, a calorie deficit is king. It's the most important thing if you want to lose weight. But what you eat still matters. Okay, yeah, technically you can lose fat eating junk food, if your calories are low enough, but you will feel like crap. You'll have no energy and your body won't thank you. And when I first started tracking macros, I made this exact mistake. I was like, oh, cool, I can fit, chocolate and crisps into my calories, every day. That's great. I'll just eat those. So I did. Okay, I did exactly that. And guess what? I was always hungry. My training sucked. I had no energy. And here's what I wish I did instead. Build meals around lean protein, whole carbs, include several servings of fruit and veg every single day. Your gut and hunger hormones will thank you. And if you want an easy win, start by just prepping 1 or 2 meals a day at home. Batch cook if you can, even better, and just control what goes into your meals, okay? Be more aware, and that alone can shift the needle fast in your favor. Okay, let's talk intermittent fasting. I've done this a lot and it works if it fits your life, okay? For me, working in the hospital, I'd wake up 6:45, I'd shower, get dressed, I'd head into work. I'd grab a black coffee on the way in and start work, and I wouldn't eat until lunchtime, okay? I don't really get super hungry in the mornings, and that alone, saves me like 500 calories, and I would have mindlessly snacked throughout the morning, even if I wasn't actually hungry. So is intermittent fasting this magical thing? No, it's not, but it does help with one key thing. So managing hunger and reducing your eating window, okay? So here's how to use it practically. Pick an 8 or 9 hour eating window, like midday to 8 p.m. and start your day with black coffee, water, or sparkling water actually, and focus your meals around protein and fiber to keep you fuller for longer, okay? Protein is the most satiating macronutrient. If you're someone who struggles with, late night snacking like I used to, this can change the game, okay? Because you just reduce the window in which you're allowed to eat. But again, it's not a requirement. It's just one tool in the box that might help you, okay? So try it. it might work for you. Now, let's break down what I actually eat, when I'm trying to get lean. And remember, mate, you don't need 6 meals or fancy supplements. Here's what a simple, effective eating structure could look like for you. So meal 1, which I would have around lunchtime, so 12:30, 1 p.m., sometimes later, it kind of just depends on the work day. It'll be lean protein, so chicken or tuna or beef. There'd be carbs in the form of whole grain rice or pasta, and a big handful of veg, okay? Quite a simple meal. And for a snack, I'd have a piece of fruit, so like a banana or an apple, and a protein yogurt. And then after I finish work, 5, 6 o'clock, I'd have a pre-workout snack. So I'd have a handful of nuts, maybe some dried fruit. The point of this is just to give you some sugar so that you can fuel your workout. And then after the workout, I'd have a protein shake, which normally has around 40 grams of protein. And then for dinner, maybe an hour or two later, it'll be protein. So steak, fish, chicken, beef, and then carbs, so rice, potatoes, and lots of vegetables as well. And a small dessert, if you've got room in your macros. And after dinner sometimes, I have a cup of tea with some dates or maybe some fruit, decaf tea, remember, and lots of water throughout the day. It's pretty simple, right? And this kind of structure keeps you energized for your training, keeps you full between your meals, and it keeps you on track for your calorie target, okay? And you don't need to eat crazy different meals every single day, okay? You don't need to eat chicken and broccoli all the time, okay? It doesn't work like that. You just need to be consistent and intentional, okay? Eat things that you like. Choose a diet that you want to stick to, okay? And if you want a free guide for fast, high-protein meals you can make at home, check out the link in the description. You can download it for free. Now, when I first tried to get shredded, I fell into the carbs are the enemy trap, okay? I read a bunch of fitness forums and I saw so many guys being like, cut out carbs completely, bro, and just watch the fat melt off, So I tried it, and yes, I actually dropped weight fast, okay? Especially at the start. But it wasn't all fat. It was water, it was glycogen and some muscle as well. I felt flat in the gym. No pump, no energy, and I was dragging myself through the workouts. Sometimes I'd finish like a set or two short because I just didn't have the energy. And you see, carbs are not evil. They are not bad. Okay, they are your body's primary fuel source, and you need them, especially if you train hard, especially if you have a busy job and you're moving around all the time. And here's the key. So use your carbs smartly, okay? Don't have a stupidly high carb meal, first thing in the morning that would give you a mid-morning slump, okay? So have your carbs around your workouts before your training, like oats, rice, fruit, to fuel your session, okay, just before, and then eat carbs after your training to help replenish your glycogen stores. And choose whole carb sources if you can. So that's things like rice, oats, sweet potatoes, fruit, whole grain pasta, bread. And just cutting carbs is not a magic bullet, okay? Being in a calorie deficit is what actually matters, okay? So keep carbs in your diet. Please don't just cut them completely so you can perform well and stay consistent in the gym. Okay, so what about fats? Okay, this is where a lot of people, myself included, accidentally go over their calories. So back in the day, I thought that peanut butter was super healthy and I need to eat lots of it, okay? So I literally scoop out 2 or 3 big spoonfuls every day in my yogurts, in my protein shakes. And the problem is that's like 400 or 500 calories, in a snack the size of like a matchbox. Remember, fats are calorie dense, 9 calories per gram compared to 4 calories per gram for carbs and protein. That's more than double, okay? There are so many sneaky fat sources to watch out for, okay? So things like, cooking oils, you can literally go overboard so easily, salad dressing, cheese, butter on toast, avocados even as well, if you have loads of those, they're healthy fats, okay? But they can still add up fast in terms of your calorie goal. So practical tips, you can try the spray oil instead of just pouring it mindlessly. You can measure your fats with a spoon, or better, get a scale and build your meals around protein and veg. And then you can just add in the fats strategically, okay? And you don't need to get rid of fats. They are so important for hormone production. You just need to control them a bit. Okay, the next thing I want to talk about is your gut health, and fiber. And this is something I completely overlooked for years, but now it's a non-negotiable part of my diet. Your gut health is linked to your hunger and satiety, your mood, your digestion, and even your body composition. And when I started focusing on eating more fiber, eating colorful whole foods, I noticed fewer cravings, better digestion, and honestly, I just felt more on point. And there's simple things you can do in your diet that can really, really help. So just eat a variety of colorful vegetables and fruits every single day. Fermented foods like pickles, kefir, kimchi, kombucha, those kind of things, add those in, they're so good for you. And whole grains, like brown rice, oats, and barley, that kind of thing. And drink plenty of water. A healthy gut supports a healthy metabolism, and a healthy metabolism can make your fat loss even easier. Okay, so what about foods that are good for fat loss? Okay, there's no food that induces fat loss, but there's a staple of foods that have helped me sort of lean down. I always keep this kind of stuff in the fridge or in the cupboard. So eggs, I love eggs. They are nutrient dense, they're filling, they're really versatile. You can have them with anything. Chicken breast, lean, high protein, they're so good for meal prep. Salmon as well, like really healthy fats, they're great for dinner, stick it in an air fryer, super easy. Frozen berries as well, they're low calorie, they're really high in fiber, and they're really good for your protein shakes. Okay, so just add them in. And protein shakes actually, they're really good for hitting your protein target on the go. I have, at least one every single day. Leafy greens, frozen veg, it's just a good way to add, volume to your meals, yeah? And black coffee, I have one every single morning, great for your pre-workout. And it can actually, blunt your hunger as well. 0 calorie, soft drinks, if it helps you stay on track, it's fine in moderation. And at the end of the day, you don't need a perfect meal plan, okay? You just need to find a diet that works for you, your lifestyle, your schedule, and what you want to achieve, okay? There's no one size fits all. And when you come across someone that's saying you need to follow this exact diet, I'd run a mile, and what works for me might not work for you. And what works for, your mate at the gym, might completely throw you off track, okay? But the principles stay the same. Calorie deficit, whole, nutrient-dense foods, and consistency with your diet. That's probably the most important thing. And if you're serious about getting lean and staying lean, you need to make this work long-term. So that means no crash diet, no magic fat-burning pills you're buying online. Just start on Sundays, batch cook a number of meals, okay, that you can just have every single day, and just repeat that for a few months and just know what's going in your food. Okay, that's really important as well. And when you cook your own food, you kind of get a sense of pride, a sense of accomplishment. Like, yeah, I made that, instead of just spending loads of money. And that's the other thing, you save money when you batch cook and you make your own meals. And you don't need to be extravagant and shop in a super expensive. Just go to Lidl, go to Aldi, go to Sainsbury's, buy fresh ingredients, whole foods, colorful veg, and make something at home. I've got some recipes for you, super easy. Link in the description. It's free to download. They're like 10, 15 minutes tops in terms of the meal prep time. Okay, super quick, super easy. And that's what you want. You want something that isn't going to take hours and hours and hours and hours of prep. Yeah. So try and figure out what works for you. What are your calorie goals? How much protein do you need to have in your diet? Work out your total daily energy expenditure. If you want to go on a cut, set your calorie target, 200-300 calories below that number, and watch the fat melt off over time if you're doing it consistently and you're training hard as well, okay? Don't go on those crash diets. Like, I've done them before. You don't feel good, okay? You don't feel yourself. You become super self-conscious when the fat starts melting off. You'll look a bit better. You'll be leaner. Maybe you'll have some ab definition, but your frame will be smaller if you've, crash dieted, and you don't want that. Like, imagine spending, a whole year bulking, you bulk from, 75 kilos, to 80 kilos, realistically, that's possible in a year with proper training. I mean, and maybe 2 years actually, because 5 kilos of mass is actually quite a lot. And let's say, it's April time, I need to cut for the summer. So you spend 2 weeks just going on a crazy cut, and you drop 6-7 kilos in that time. You're not going to have held on to all that mass, okay? And what I'm saying is that if you go too fast, too hard, you will crash, you will lose muscle, and you don't want to do that, okay? So when you're going through a growth phase, you need to be careful. Don't go too high and give yourself too much of a body fat to get off at the end. You don't want that. So eat healthy, whole foods, avoid the McDonald's, avoid the pizza if you can, because, they're super processed and they have so much fat in them. And, don't get me wrong, fat's not bad. But the point is that fast foods are calorie dense, okay? They don't really fill you up. There's not really much in terms of volume, but they just taste so damn good because they're just laced with calories, okay? So be smart out there, eat healthy, eat clean, and be consistent with your diet. And if you want help building a plan that actually fits your lifestyle with real accountability and guidance, DM me the word work on Instagram. Otherwise, I will see you in the next one, man. Peace.